I've always found it interesting how every species on Earth has a species-specific diet, except humans. Humans can't seem to figure out what the heck we're supposed to eat. There's every diet out there from carnivore to paleo to low carb to vegan, vegetarian. There's all these different kinds of diets out there, and everybody, claims that their diet is the best one. I've always been interested in health and wellness, so this is a topic that I've always thought about. I've always kind of wondered what are we supposed to eat and what is the best diet for our species. And so I did a little bit more digging, and I've come to the conclusion that humans are frugivores. And here's why. So our nearest DNA mammal relatives are primates. So chimpanzees, apes, monkeys, they are all the most genetically similar to us, and they eat a frugivore diet. So a frugivore is basically somebody who eats mostly fruit, some leafy green vegetables, and a few nuts and seeds. And when you look at a carnivore and their anatomy and how their anatomy is designed, first of all, they hunt and kill their meat. They eat it raw. They have claws, and they have very long, sharp canine teeth that allow them to tear into raw animal flesh. They are attracted to their prey, so they see their prey and they go after it. They want to eat it. Humans don't tend to do that. If you were to put a baby or a small child in a room with a banana and a rabbit, which food do you think that child is going to eat? I can promise you it won't be the rabbit. They might, want to pick up the rabbit and snuggle with it and play with it, but they're not going to want to eat it. And, they're most likely going to pick up the banana, and that's what they're going to want to eat. So carnivores also have very short intestinal tracts. So their intestinal tract tends to be about 3 times the length of their body. And the reason for that is because meat putrefies very quickly in the gut. So they need to pass that meat through their gut very quickly before it starts to rot. Humans, our intestinal tract is about 10 to 12 times the length of our body. And so what we actually need is a lot of fiber in order to move food through our intestinal tract. And we don't have the digestive enzymes to break down meat. Meat requires a very acidic environment. And so we have to produce enzymes in order to break that down. Humans don't have those enzymes. And we have, our hands are designed for picking fruit. We can very easily pick ripe fruit out of a tree. Or an animal who's a carnivore doesn't have the ability to do that. We have trichromatic vision, which allows us to see in full color. And the reason for that is so that we can spot ripe fruit. If you're looking at a tree and you have apples that aren't quite ripe yet, they're still going to be green. Where when those apples start to turn red, we can obviously see those apples and we can pick them and eat them. We have a poor sense of smell compared to carnivorous animals. Our sense of smell, we only need to be able to smell ripe fruit, and fruit when it's ripe is very sweet. It's very easy to smell. Whereas, when a carnivore is hunting its prey, it needs to have a stronger sense of smell because those prey animals don't put off as much of a scent as ripe fruit does. As far as dairy goes, there's no other species on Earth that consumes the milk of another species. This has always been bizarre to me. I never understood why we drank the milk from a cow. Humans are designed to drink human breast milk until the age of weaning, and then we're not supposed to consume dairy after that. That's why so many people are lactose intolerant, because they lose those digestive enzymes to break down milk, because after a certain age we no longer need milk from our mothers. We can eat solid food. So the fact that we, drink dairy from a cow, which is designed to grow a baby calf into an 800-pound animal, makes no sense to me. I've always thought that was strange. So, we're not supposed to eat dairy. We're taught that we're supposed to eat grain-based foods and, wheat and corn and rice. And in nature, if you were to see a field of grass that had gone to seed, you would not have any interest in eating that. The only reason we eat grains is because we grind them down into flour, and then we mix a bunch of other stuff with the flour, and then we turn it into something else. A species-specific food wouldn't require that many steps, right? In nature, we would just be able to, get our food and eat it. There shouldn't be 10 steps between us and eating our food. So grains are not a part of the natural human diet. A lot of us eat root vegetables like carrots and onions and garlic and beets. And while I do think there is a place for those things in the human diet, most of us are repelled by dirt. We don't generally want to eat food that has dirt on it. And so anything that we pulled out of the ground, we would have to wash. Most of us peel our root vegetables. We're not going to eat, the skin of the beets, for example. And so I think root vegetables might have been sort of a food of last resort, but it certainly wouldn't be the first choice. Nuts and seeds, like I mentioned in the beginning, primates do eat nuts and seeds, but if you were to eat nuts in the wild, first of all, it would be a really difficult thing to do because the shell of a nut, our property has hundreds of walnut trees on it, and the shell of a nut is so hard that you have to have tools in order to be able to crack those shells open and get to the nut. Now, in theory, you could, smash it with a rock or something along those lines. So I do think there's a place for nuts and seeds in the human diet, but I don't think it would have comprised a big part of the human diet. So that basically leaves us with fruit and vegetables, like leafy vegetables. So I believe that fruit is actually what our diet is supposed to be mostly comprised of. We're attracted to fruit. We're attracted to those bright colors. We all have a sweet tooth. We all crave sweet things. And that's because our body runs on carbohydrates. We're meant to eat sweet things. Fruit is easily digestible. We digest it very quickly. It's very hydrating because fruit is mostly water. We're not able to produce our own vitamin C, so we actually have to get our vitamin C from food. And as most of us know, the highest sources of vitamin C are fruit, where carnivores can actually produce their own vitamin C, so they don't have that same requirement for vitamin C that humans do. We're also the only species that cooks our food. Every other species eats their food in its raw, natural state. That's because animals don't have access to fire or pots and pans or all these tools that we use to cook our food. So why do we cook our food? That's kind of strange, isn't it? A lot of the foods that we cook, it's because they can't be eaten in their raw state, or even if they could be eaten in their raw state, it wouldn't be appealing to us. So not many of us would eat a raw steak, for example. Not many of us would eat raw root vegetables. We might, like to snack on raw carrots. Even if we're having, say, raw beets in a salad or something, we're probably going to shred those to make them edible. We're probably not just going to bite into a beet like we would an apple, for example. We add a lot of seasoning to our food in order to make it more palatable. We do all kinds of things in order to make our food enjoyable. And when you think about it, fruit is one of the only foods that you can just pick it and eat it exactly the way it is. It tastes delicious, and we don't have to do anything to it in order to make it edible. So what that tells me is the vast majority of our natural diet should be raw fruit. We're also the only species that experiences chronic illness the way that humans do. I truly believe that most of that comes from the fact that we're not eating our natural diet. I believe the vast majority of disease is caused by the food that we put into our bodies, if you can call it that. I've also been watching quite a few documentaries about the meat and dairy industries and the absolute atrocities that take place behind the walls of slaughterhouses. And I can guarantee that if the majority of people knew how that meat actually got on their plates, they would never eat meat again. Even the dairy industry, I used to be a vegetarian. I was a vegetarian for 15 years at one point, but I still consumed eggs and dairy without fully understanding how bad those industries were as well. And now that I have a full picture of that, I cannot in good conscience ever go back to eating meat again. I've already made the decision to go completely plant-based with my diet. I truly believe that that is the natural, healthiest human diet. And for the next 30 days, I've made a commitment to myself to eat completely raw. I'm going to do raw vegan for 30 days based on a frugivore diet, eating mostly fruit, some leafy green veggies, and some nuts and seeds. And I'm really excited. I'm excited about the simplicity of eating this way. You think about how much time we spend on food. I've always cooked from scratch for my family. We grow a lot of our food. I've put a lot of time and energy into feeding my family healthy foods, and without really considering the fact that by cooking those foods, I was actually destroying most of the nutrients that were in that food to begin with. And so I think it's going to be interesting to shift toward more raw foods. It's going to save so much time, so much cleanup. I've been, for the last probably 2 weeks, I've been doing raw till 4, just because I wasn't fully ready to commit to this yet, and I just wanted to see if I noticed any improvements or changes from eating raw plant foods. And just from doing raw till 4, within the first day, I noticed a huge increase in my energy levels. I actually was shocked at how much more energetic I felt. I was diagnosed with ADHD a couple of years ago. I believe I was 47 when I was diagnosed with ADHD. I really struggle with just brain fog and energy and focus, and having trouble initiating tasks, having trouble staying on task. And immediately all of those symptoms disappeared just from eating raw foods until 4 o'clock, and then I would eat a cooked dinner with my family. So I'm really excited to see what changes I noticed from going completely raw for 30 days. I've already lost probably 4 to 5 pounds just from doing raw till 4. Weight loss isn't my ultimate goal with doing this, but it will be kind of a nice side effect if that happens, because I do have about 10 pounds that I'd like to lose. So I think that'll happen naturally. I'm not doing it intentionally to lose weight. I do think that, as we eat our natural diet, that our weight will stabilize where it's supposed to. I do know that it's hard to shift paradigms, and that's why I've decided to do this video, is because I think, when we've been taught something from such an early age, if something is repeated to us often enough, we accept it as fact without really looking into it ourselves, without doing the work to research it. We eat meat because everybody else eats meat and because that's what's available at most places. We cook our food because that's our culture. Cooking is a huge part of most cultures. And so much of our social lives tend to revolve around food. So to change that is challenging. And so that's why I want to share this journey with you. I want to show you that it's possible. I want to share the improvements that I'm noticing by eating these foods. I'm excited about the simplicity of just eating raw fruit and salads and not having to spend so much time in the kitchen. I think it's going to be a lot of fun just eating whole, fresh food. And I hope that you'll follow me on this journey and even join me if you're so inclined. I'm going to leave some links in the description for some of the documentaries that I watched as I was, exploring this path. And if you want to follow along, just hit the subscribe button and hit the bell so that way you can be notified when I post new videos. I will be sharing regularly throughout this process. So, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching.